All right, so let's get to our demo. So what we're going to do is go over here to my designer, and as I mentioned, here, let me minimize this. As I mentioned, when you add event streams module to Ignition, or of course you install Ignition 8.3, you're going to see a new area in the designer for event streams. And this is where you can configure one or more streams. Now you can organize those streams just like you would organize views and scripts and all of that into folders, so that you can easily kind of see the different kind of ways you want to name and provide a hierarchy for that. So it's totally up to you. I'm going to create a new stream here. With every stream, as I mentioned, you give it a name and you give it a source. So let's start with a simple one, and that is a tag source. So I want to bring data in from a tag, and so we're going to use our tag event here as a source. And so you just select the source you're interested in, you create the stream, and then now you can see that kind of this pipeline in action, in that when the tag event comes in, so the configuration here is which tag or tags are you interested in looking at. And then once that tag comes in, we can encode that data, so we can specify what the format of that data is supposed to be. We can then filter that data, we can transform it, we can buffer it, we can then go ahead and provide some handlers, so we can do something with that data. Let's do something really, really simple. Let's take a UDT. So I'm actually going to go here to a motor UDT. I'm actually going to just copy that whole motor path because that is actually, if I look at subscribing to the UDT, it's just a full JSON object. So I'm going to bring in motor 1. When that changes, it's going to be a JSON object, and I want to do something with it. So I've got to go over here to a handler, and I got to go and write that somewhere. So for that, there's lots of different options. Let's say that we want to just send this out as a pure MQTT message. So we're going to say that this is motors, motor 1. Here is going to be the topic namespace for that. And we're going to send it out to, I have the MQTT engine and transmission modules installed here, and I have it connected to a broker on my local machine. And I've also got MQTT Explorer here. It's where I can actually see that publish being sent out to to that broker. So it's a real simple. I'm just taking a tag and writing that as a pure JSON message to MQTT. Of course, this was possible with the transmission module, but just kind of starting with one example here. I'm also going to do one more handler, which is write to a log message. So we're going to do, this is my tag handler. And we're going to do an info message to our logging system, and we're going to write the entirety of the data. That's the whole JSON message that's coming in there. So this is just an expression as to what do I want to put? What's the message that I want to put in the log? So I've done two things. I have two places that it's going, and it's one source for when that motor changes. It's going to then write it to those handlers. So once we go ahead and save, then you can see up here that you have some statistics that are going to be there. So it's going to show us what's being sent through that. And if I look at the status, I can actually see the events received and what's been going on. So I actually do have one event. That was the initial event that we had come through, which is the initial value here when this started up. And you can kind of see that has then got sent to both of those handlers. I don't have any error messages here, so everything was successful. So if we go and look at our logs, we're going to see there's our tag handler, and there's the JSON message for what got sent to the logs. And if I come over here to MQTT Explorer, there's my motors, motor 1, and there's that straight JSON value for that UDT, which has all the tags in it, and of course the quality and timestamp of that. So very, very simple to kind of set up our first stream. So there's lots of different possibilities that we can do here. But what I want to do is kind of show you some of the things in between here in terms of the filtering, the transforming, and of course, what that means, as well as potentially doing error handling. So let's take a look at a couple of those. I'm going to create another stream here. We're going to show actually bringing data in from a REST API. So I'm going to use HTTP here. I'm going to call HTTP. And so this is going to add an endpoint to Ignition. So this is actually really cool in that I can post, once we save this stream, there's a URL to get to this, and I can post data to that URL, and data will come in. And with that, I can then handle that data and do whatever I want with it. So the configuration here is I'm not gonna require HTTPS. I don't have TLS turned on here or authentication, but sometimes you wanna have authentication, so you don't just let anybody post this endpoint, or you wanna require it to be a secure connection. You can certainly do that. Now, once that comes in, I'm gonna have it be a JSON, but you can have it be, if it's a string, a byte array, a JSON object, you can encode it how you want. And then now you have the ability to then filter and transform. So before I do the filter and transform, let's just go over here and handle this data by writing it to a database. Let's show the database handler where I'm going to write to my local database. I have a MariaDB database to a table that's called Kafka messages. And I know it's not Kafka here, but I'm going to use that table. And so I'm going to write this. I'm going to write the timestamp in there, and I'm going to map a couple of columns. Machine is going to be a string, and it's going to go to the event data machine. So part of the JSON message that I'll post is machine, and then we have temperature and we have status. So those are the three things that we'll bring in. Temperature is a float and status is a string, and so we'll put all three of these in here. Temperature and in status. Okay, so now I've got this, so I'm going to insert a new record. So when I receive that post message, I'm going to then handle it by inserting a record into the database, into this table here, and it will go through stored and forward system, which is great. So that if the database was down, we would still make sure that is going to get stored eventually. So now that we've got that configured, let's go ahead and save it. And so I've got nothing, as you can see, it's all zeros here. Nothing's come through yet on this particular pipeline. But again, now we have both of them running. We have two pipelines running in parallel. And as data comes in, they're going to run. And they could be running lots of times as data is coming in. Let's go ahead and send that. I'm going to use a tool like Postman here. It's called Insomnia, where I'm going to send that JSON message. There's my extruder machine, my temperature, and my status. And you'll notice that I'm going here. This is the URL to get to that endpoint. It's on my local machine. So localhost 8088, it's /system/event stream for that module. And then this is my project, my name of my project called demo. And the name of my stream is called HTTP. So I'm going to send it to that. So let's go ahead. I'm going to move this down a little bit. And you can see if I press send, then I now have one that came in. And it has now then gone to the handler that got written to the database. So if I go and take a look at my database and refresh, I can see there's my extruder that I have here. Very simple. Now that record got written to the database. That's pretty awesome, right? So how quick and easy that is to go. Now let's talk about the filtering and transforming here. So the filtering is just the ability, if we want to, for a given event, if we want to ignore that event, maybe there's something, a part of it that we don't care about, and you just don't want that to come to the, you don't want it to be brought to the handler. You want to ignore it. This is your opportunity to do that. And it is right now writing code, Python code. It's simple, but hopefully in the future we can add some more flexibility here. But let's say, for example, that if my status is test, I do not want to handle that. I don't want that to go through. So what we can do is simply return is event data of status does not equal test. So if we filter it, we filter it if it equals test. If it is test, we don't want that data. So it's true if we want to ignore it, we want to filter it out. And so then now let's go ahead and save that. So let's go and let's put a running here. Oh. I had the wrong way there. So let me go, does not equal test here. So if I send that through, then now you can see that went to my handler and that got written to the database. So if we go to my database, I can refresh. There's my extruder, it stopped. Okay, now if I go and set this as test, then I'm going to ignore it because you can see I've got two, but one has been ignored and that did not go to the handler because I don't want to use that kind of message. So that ability to filter is really important to get rid of things that you may not want to move through the stream, because you can have lots of data coming in depending on the source that you're dealing with. The other ability here is for us to transform the message, where we can add new parts to that message. So for example, here, let's just do something simple which is I want to add something new to it. I'm going to add a timestamp that's new, which is going to get it from system.date.now. So I'm going to add, this is again using Python code, I'm going to add a new field to that. And I can also call like event.data of, you know, hello world, right? So we can add something like that random. And we can have that being sent out. So what I'm going to do, since it's not going to be written to the database, let's create a tag over here. Let's show another way that we can bring data, or we can write data. I'm going to create a memory tag that is going to be my event message, and it's going to be a document style tag where I'm going to write that. I'm going to handle that and write the full message to this event, to this this tag. Let's go over here to our handler. Let's add a tag in. The tag path is that. It's going to hard code that, but it's an expression, so it could come from the the message itself as to which tag to write to. I'm going to write the entirety of the data message there, and the quality is going to be good 192, and the timestamp is now. So we'll write that fully qualified value. So let's go ahead and save this. Okay, and so now we've got the transform turned on. So let's go over here. Let's put a message let's do a different machine. Let's do a filler machine. It is got different temperature. It's running. I'm going to send that through. That went through the filter. It got transformed, and then again, I got received by 2 handlers. And of course, if I look at this event message here, you can see. Let's go open up the actual value. Let me just kind of copy it out here into here so we can see it. But there you got my timestamp in there and the hello world that was added to that message. So the transform is the ability to manipulate that payload or change it or do something with it before it actually gets to the handler. Now, last thing I want to point out, because you know, once you transform, you can then encode that object again. So I'm going, you know, JSON to JSON, but you have the buffering, and the buffering here is to ensure that the data is gonna actually get to the handlers, right? We want it to get to handlers. So we have a lot of data coming in. Let's say there's hundreds of thousands of messages coming in. We, you know, and the handlers are actively busy, like routing it to a database or to another message system or whatever. We don't want to lose any of that data. So the buffer is a way to ensure that we queue it all up so that it does finally get to that handler. And you can look at the configuration for how that works. So the last thing I want to point out here, and I'll show the buffering in just a moment, we'll look at Kafka. But I want to point out is our error handler. If you did have some error message, especially when handling that data, if you want to handle that, maybe you want to write a message to a tag, or to have an alarm that goes out, or you want to write to the log system, or you want to then write to a database if there was a failure. You have that ability on the errors to do something with that, right? So you have complete control for how this pipeline works, but it's all defined in this one place, and we can easily see all the streams that we're dealing with in this one view. So that's very exciting. All right, so let's kind of show a couple of other streams that we can do. A new one that we've added to Ignition 8.3 is Kafka. So let's talk about that here for a moment. So I'm going to bring a Kafka source. And Kafka, it's a pub subsystem. We connect to it. We can specify topics that we're interested in subscribing to. This is the source, so we're subscribing to a message, and then when those come in, we're going to handle them. We're going to do something with them. So with this, we have to configure a connection to Kafka. So let's go back here to our gateway. If I go here to connections and go over to this new area we have in Ignition 8.3 called service connectors. This is where we can add lots of different service connectors as we go forward to different systems. So Google Pub Sub and Azure services and AWS services, all of that will be in the service connector area where we can have more that are going to be introduced. Right now, we just have the one, a Kafka connector, and I have that one already configured. It's going to a Kafka cluster that I have here locally that I'm running in Docker. And so I'm now connected to that broker, and I'm ready to go. So let's go back to our designer. So that's the local Kafka connector. For the topic, I want to subscribe on a topic called Ignition Messages. I want to wait for a message to come in and then we're gonna handle that. I'm gonna give myself a group ID, so I'm gonna call this ignition group 10 as my group ID, and it's just a unique group ID. And so then when that data comes in, it's going to be a JSON data, so I'm going to handle that. A lot of what we deal with is going to be JSON for a lot of these pieces. And then what we want to do is handle that data. So let's, for the sake of this, let's write that to the database as well. And so going to that local database, Kafka messages, we'll store that timestamp into the timestamp, and we'll add those 3. It's going to be a similar message: machine, temperature, and status. So we'll do those 3 again here. So string, float, string, and I want to bring in the machine part of the message, and I want to bring in the temperature, and lastly the status. All right, so now I've got this stream set up, and this is going to be a good place for us to kind of show the scalability and show the kind of the buffering that's set up with the event streams and just how performant the system is. So let's show bringing a message in. With that, I have this Python code that's here to produce a message. So it's just going to create a random message again with the machine temperature and status, and it's going to publish that to the cluster, and I'm going to be able to receive that here on this stream. So let's do that. You can see that there is my value that was sent to that ignition messages, and this was again outside of ignition, so it's publishing the message there. I can see that 1 came in, so Kafka got 1, and that got written to the database. So if I take a look at my database here, let me bring that and refresh. You can see there's that conveyor that's faulted with the temperature, and so every one of those that we do, let's do another one. Right, so that got handled. There's now 2. Let's go and refresh this, and there's conveyor faulted with a different temperature. So really easy for us to handle that message. Now again, if I wanted to write a message out to Kafka, if I want to receive it in one message and write to a different Kafka message, I can create another handler, right? I could write that to Kafka or MQTT or to a tag in Ignition. And if I want to write that to a tag, we could do the same thing, right? Do this event message tag. It's really easy to be able to then figure out where we want this data to go. So I'll write that whole event message, good quality, and so now if I do this, let's do another one. That's going to now write to 2 handlers, and so there it just updated my tag. And these, by the way, these handlers run in sequential order. So you can see there's an order over here. I can move them up or down. And the reason for that is if it fails on one of those handlers, you may not want to have it go through. There is this failure handling where if it fails on the handler, you can abort and not have it go. But if you ignore, you can abort, you can retry, or you can ignore. If you ignore the message, it will then go to the next handler in the queue or in that list. So it does allow you to have multiple, but they run in order that you want them to run. Okay, so let's kind of show the scalability. Because the cool part about event streams is that we can send lots and lots of records through this. So I have another one that I'm going to run here called a load, where this is going to be 100,000 records going through that. And it's going to get all written to the database. So let's run that, and you're going to see here all the messages that got sent to the broker, and now look at all of them coming in. And what's cool is that this is now being handled, but we can't handle them fast enough. So it's all in the buffer. The buffer is keeping 500 records in that buffer as we're going forward. It's an infinite buffer that we have set up. It's keeping those records in, making sure they get to that handler so that ultimately we can handle all of these data points. And there we go. We now have 100,000 records that we brought in. And if we go to, and we handle that 200,000 times, right? So the tag, as well as we wrote it to the database as well. If I go look at my database, and let's do a select count star from Kafka messages, and let me go connect here. You can see, we get the right table name in there. You can see I've got now 100,000 records, and we can send a tremendous amount of data through these streams very easily there. Okay, so let's talk about some other handlers. We talked about a database handler. The gateway event is where we can actually send from, let's say we want to send from one message to another. So from one pipeline to another, I could actually then send out a payload to another event stream that we have on this server, or even a remote server we have going through our gateway network. Real cool to be able to do that. Gateway message to send a message to a message handler within Ignition that we would receive. HTTP would be to write that to a third-party API, so we can post that, or we can put or post to a third-party API very easily. So we can write that to another source. We can send out a Kafka message. We can do a logger, which we showed. We can, of course, do MQTT. That's a cool one. So let's. I did that the very first. Let me get rid of these. So I can. This could be just like a Kafka message. So I can go straight MQTT, and that, which is great. I can go from Kafka to MQTT as data comes in. So let's publish a record here, and now it's going to be handled in 3 different places, and it wrote it to an event streams Kafka message now in there, and there's my message. Real easy to get that in. So being able to read and write with any kind of payload format for MQTT is big. Gives us a lot of flexibility with what we can actually do. Of course, we showed write to tag, and then the last one's a script. And this one is, again, you handle the data, you get the event message there and the state, and then you can literally use any one of our system functions or Python functions to be able to work with that particular data. So it's kind of the catch-all. If we didn't have a built-in handler, you might be able to kind of do that through scripting. But ultimately, there's the SDK, which we'll talk about next, and we're going to be coming out with lots of additional handlers and sources as we go forward. All right, let's see. Before we go on to the next piece, I want to show one more listener, because I think it's really cool that we have this, which is the event listener. So that's this one here. So the event listener is where we can listen for an event coming from either scripting or coming from our alarm system in particular. So I'll show you how that works. So there's nothing to configure for the event source. It's just listening for an event to come in, and when that does, we can then go and do something with that event there. And so I think in this particular case, let's just go and send it out. We'll put in our log. So event there, and we'll just put the whole event message in the logs just so we can see it. Okay, so this is a pretty simple one. Now, how we use it, there's 2 different ways we can use this. We can go to perspective and or in scripting. So I've got a button here that is actually going to call a system.eventstream.publish event. So I'm going to publish this same kind of JSON message I've been using everywhere, and publish it to the event pipeline here in our demo project, and that will then go to that event listener. So let's go ahead and run that. So we come back to our event. You can see I've got 1, and of course I handled that particular data. Now here I had an error message on that. So let's see. Oh, I think it's okay. I did have an initial error message on there, so you can see if there's any error messages, you can see what's going on that. Let's go back to our logs, and I did have an error message on the log, but real easy to get that data in from an alarm message there. Not sure what happened there, but let me do this. Let me do a MQTT. We're gonna just publish it to a different one here. So let's go back to perspective, and there we go. That got sent out. Let's go to MQTT. There is our MQTT stream. And so you can see that message came from there. That's cool. You have the ability from scripting to instantiate one of these pipelines and send data into it, especially maybe somebody's entering data in a form or whatever, and they want that pipeline to be kicked off. You can certainly do that. Now, another more powerful way is with our alarming system. We can actually create a pipeline. So I'm going to just call it pipeline. And in the pipeline, we have an event stream source. So I can actually, from an alarm coming in, I can have it go to one of my to one of those event streams. So I'm gonna go ahead and save this. And what I'm gonna do is gonna go to a tag, my writable Boolean tag, which has an alarm on it. and we're going to have it go into that pipeline when it becomes active. All right, so let's go ahead and let's go back to our stream, the event stream. Let's go and make this tag go true. And so now we have a 2, it just came in, and that got written here. And as you can see, that put all of the event message, the alarm message, that got written now to the MQTT. So I can have all my alarms being published through one of these pipelines, going wherever you want it to go, and have it easily configurable. All right, so that kind of shows a lot of different examples, the sources and handlers of that. The last thing I want to point out is the ability for you to define your own sources and handlers. And I'm not going to go into crazy detail on this, but we do have, if you go to our GitHub page, and I have links in the PowerPoint, which I'll share in a moment. Under SDK examples, we've got an example of a event stream source and event stream handler, and it kind of shows how to do that. Yeah, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. The event stream source is really simple in that what it's doing is it's taking a list, a string, a comma separated string, taking that and sending the strings through the pipeline very simply, and the handler actually then writes that to a file. It's a file handler, writes to a file on the Ignition server. So there's the source handlers that are there. You can download that, you can then compile it, or you can see how it works, how it adds that. So basically, what we're doing is we're getting the event stream manager and we're registering a new source or a new handler for that. And what you are doing then is you are defining, of course, because there's a designer portion of that, you are creating an editor for the designer, which is the UI for putting all the configuration you want for that particular source or handler. So again, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. The GitHub page, the 2 examples are there. You can download those and play with them. What I want to show you is installing that and get it to work. So I'm going to go here to modules. I'm going to install a new module. We're going to use the event stream source example. I've downloaded it, compiled it to an assigned MLDL. I'm going to install that. And one thing that's really important to note in Ignition 8.3 is that when you install modules, it does not install on the fly. You now have to restart the gateway. So let me close my designer, and restart the gateway, and that's the only way to get these modules to start up. You have to restart. If you install a new one, remove one, any of that, you got to restart the gateway. So this is a big change in Ignition 8.3 from before. But doing the hot swappable modules, it added a lot of complexity to Ignition. So this is now very, very clean and simple. All right, so now this is starting back up. What we're going to see is there's a new module that added a new source to our event stream. So if I now go to it, I should see this new one that has just come in. So we'll give it here a moment to start up. Perfect. Let's go now and launch our designer. All right, so let's go to our event streams. Let's create a new source or a new stream, and you'll notice that in the source I have an example source that is just what I created. Call that example, and this was a really simple one, but here's the UI to just put a bunch of items: item 1, item 2, item 3. It's, again, this is a string, and we can write that. I'll write that to a log that is called example, and it'll be just the string itself that's being written. So you can see that it's now running. It's just writing those directly. Let's log in and go to the logs, and you see that it's just writing all of those items. So pretty simple, but it shows how that works. And I'm going to go ahead and disable it now, but it shows how that works, how you can create a source and handler for event streams. So hopefully you got a good sense of all that is possible here with event streams, and there's more to come, right, as we go forward.